and today we're going to be talking about nutrition and diet and its role in helping with remission and breast cancer. Basically, this is part of a month-long series where we're talking about ways to help people that are dealing with breast cancer. Maybe are going through treatments, or are now classified as survivors, and we're discussing things that will help women and help them feel confident about the future and hope for that they can continue on in a good way. So today, this afternoon, the title of this presentation is about my plant-based diet. This diet is something that I was encouraged by my friend who's going to be speaking in a little while, Laurel Kamarni, and how I feel like after I've done a lot of research that this type of diet is really important for people that have had cancer and will help them, in my mind, stay in a good place. So everything that I'm presenting is based on my own personal research. So the caveat is I'm not a doctor, I'm not a nurse. Later on, we will be having a nurse speak who has done 30 years of work with nutrition and oncology. So she'll be talking at around 2 o'clock our time. So let's go. So why is it so important what you eat for your breast health? And I started thinking about, well, what is it? Well, you are what you eat, of course. And the question is, what are breasts made of? And this is a little diagram you can see there. It's really beautiful. If you look at the breast from straight on, there's 20 milk ducts, and it looks like a flower, actually. So it's kind of an interesting, beautiful thing that we have. It's composed of a layer of fat, and it surrounds the mammary glands, extends throughout the whole breast area, and it is intricately linked to hormones, especially estrogen. Again, this is the whole idea. Estrogen plays a major role in how these glands develop and mature after puberty. So I did write all this stuff. I had a bigger, longer version, so hopefully I'll remember everything. So from what I could fathom as I was reading and looking at everything, in my mind it made sense that healthy fats would help create healthy breast tissue. So that's my feeling about why this could be a really important part of survivorship. So what are unhealthy fats and healthy fats? Well, what do you think? Do you think that's healthy or unhealthy fat? Yeah, I used to love bacon, but there is fake bacon now. The big thing that we used to eat was sausage and hot dogs. In fact, I read a book called Eat Right for Your Blood Type, and I'm an O blood. And it said, if you're an O blood, eat lots of meat. And so I took that to heart. I was eating meat, breakfast, lunch, dinner, And of course, the triple-decker Wendy's hamburger. Well, I shouldn't say that. Okay, potato chips. What do you think? Healthy, unhealthy? Yeah. Unless you make them yourself, which you can do, it's probably good to stay clear of them, especially, just thinking about this if you want to be extra careful. Again, French fries, if you make them yourself, you know how they're being made, but when you buy them at McDonald's, not usually the best thing. And of course, I used to eat a lot of sweet things. For a while I went through a sweet kick before I had children, but I did have a little love affair with sweet rolls. So what's so bad about animal fat? One of the things that I found out, and I kind of truncated this, and at the end there's going to be resources where you can read this in more detail because I didn't want to put everything in there. But there's been a lot of research. They do studies over time looking at how women, especially they do longitudinal studies with nurses. They find out what they're eating, how much they're eating. And they found that women that were eating animal fats had a 33% greater risk of breast cancer, and it was specifically red meat was one of the biggest issues, was one of the biggest correlations. Also, they found high intake of animal fat has an increased risk of colon cancer as well. So those two things have been shown over time with medical research that there is a risk factor. Also, when you cook animal foods on high heat, we used to do a lot of barbecues. When you barbecue meat, it actually creates carcinogens. There's amino acids and creatine, which is in animal tissue. And when you heat it up, I think it's, I wrote it down, I think it's over, I'd have to look again. But especially if it gets that charred, blackened, like that was a big thing for a while, blackened Cajun food. That creates carcinogens in the meat itself. So that's making it hard on your body too. So I said, warning, let's think about this, be careful. So what's good about plant fats? Again, this is some just, little bits of information here. It helps your heart. It reduces cholesterol in your body. A lot of plant fats have vitamin E, which is a powerful antioxidant. And people, again, there have been research that people that are eating more plant fats have a 16% lower risk of dying from any cause. It isn't just cancer. So here's some idea. What are healthy fats? Well, avocados are one of the really star, and we're gonna be having some guacamole during break. So kind of following in with this. Another, beans, legumes have a lot of good fats in them, especially if you cook them yourself. Try to avoid cans if you can. That's funny, I said that. Also, nuts, especially ones that aren't roasted, that are just raw, are the best for you, not salted. And again, like all different kinds of vegetables have tiny bits of fat in them, but the fat that's in them is unsaturated versus saturated. So that makes it much better for how your blood flows through your body, your muscles, everything, your heart. So plant fats are special because they are rich in vitamins and heart healthy. They're anti-inflammatory, which is a big concern with cancer, is that inflammation is one of the things they look at, and plant fats help tremendously with that. And apparently, as they've been studying people over time, they find that people that eat more plant fats in their diet, they cut their risk of dying by 10 to 15%. I was trying to remember, there was a study about like how many years longer you can live if you go mostly plant-based. And I was trying to remember, I guess I should look that up, but I think it was like 5 to 10 years added on to your life by going more plant-based. So how can this help your tissue? So one of the things, fiber helps eliminate excess estrogens. So what was going on with me, and maybe happened to some of the other women here, is sometimes the hormonal balance gets thrown off in our bodies. And so these different things can help lower the risk and protect your body from cancer, whether it's in your breasts or other parts of your body. Vitamin C, beta carotene, carrots are really good for you. Selenium, which is found in different kinds of nuts. And they found that young women who eat a really fiber-rich diet, it helps protect you later in life too. So I thought that was interesting. So this is a little bit about my story. Back in 2019, I was feeling really weird. Like my periods were really bizarre. Everything was just weird. I was not feeling too great. I like to swim, and I'd go swim, and I just feel really tired. I'd try to go run, and I just wasn't feeling my normal energy. So I went in to see a doctor here in town, and she did some of my blood work, and she found that my estradiol levels, she said, you haven't gone through hormonal change yet. She wondered if I was going through menopause or something. She found that my estradiol level was 72, and standard range is between 5 and 66, but it can vary with your cycle. But unfortunately, there wasn't a lot more done with that number. And in reality, what was happening is I was having this ticking time bomb going on, sadly. And in April of 2021, I found out that I had stage 1 invasive ductal carcinoma. It was both estrogen and progesterone positive. Now, I know there's different kinds of cancers out there. There's like triple negative, and we can talk about those separately, but this was just my personal story. And I went 100% plant-based after my surgery back in May of 2021. And I felt like it really helped my recovery afterwards and getting back into swimming and going through radiation. So I do monitor my hormonal levels every few months, and I'm no longer estrogen dominant. Even though I haven't technically gone through that hormonal change yet, things are not as out of balance as they used to be. And I really feel that a lot of it has to do with my diet. So what plants help reduce estrogen dominance? Where you can get too much estrogen, anything too much is not good. So the cruciferous vegetables are really good for women and men too. Good for everybody. But broccoli in particular, and we actually have some fresh organic broccoli after we finished talking. You can have some. Broccoli, it's amazing, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But all of these different things, if you can incorporate these in your diet every day, and some of these things, if you can eat them raw, not everything may be palatable to eat it raw, but lightly cooked or raw is the best to get the most of those different good phytochemicals that help fight cancer. So, yeah, I'm going to see if I can say this right. Glucosinolates or whatever. I have trouble saying all these medical words. But basically, there's a chemical in broccoli that shuts off cancer cells. It stops things from metastasizing in the body. And it's the broccoli's natural way to protect against pests like insects. And my daughter Heidi said, why don't they use that for pesticide instead of like the Roundup, which causes cancer? Like maybe this would be a great idea, right? To use something in nature that actually kills cancer cells and kills bugs. Like, what a great idea. So indole 3-carbinol is another compound that's found in cruciferous vegetables, and it helps your liver detox excess hormones or excess things that just aren't so good that can cause cancer. And specifically with breast issues, so for instance, like I had one side that was bad that I had to have surgery on, and this side seemed to be all good. So they're just watching this side. So this is partly why I'm talking about this too, is that sometimes you may have something on one side, you don't want it to come to the other side. So this is a way, broccoli helps with the metabolism of estrogen, and the 16A-OHE-1, which you could read more about, that pathway is what causes cancer. That's what they've found through research. And broccoli helps your body switch away from that more serious cancer-causing potential way to a healthier, the 2-OHE1. Another thing that was really interesting, and I read about this in Daniela's books and online, is probiotics. And they've been doing a lot of research with animals and on computer models, and starting to do it with people as well, to look at the role that specifically it's Lactobacillus acidophilus And there's another one, lactococcus. That one is harder to find in a plant-based diet. You have to get that in a special, a special compound like a probiotic capsule. But I wanted to talk a little bit about lactobacillus. That is something that you can get in, well, I'll even put this up here, sauerkraut, kimchi, apple cider vinegar. If you're not doing plant-based, like a little bit of animal products, it's in kefir and other types of yogurt. They now have coconut yogurt, which is called, that I get at the health food store, and it has those good things in it too, and it's plant-based. And so what they found is that women that had, especially the lactobacillus, they did not have breast cancer. Like they did not find, and so this was so interesting. I guess when you digest things, that there's these little white blood cells that come up, I think I'm saying this right, and they actually travel and they go to your breast area. And that's when you're nursing your children, that's what gives them the healthy bacteria for their gut when they're being nursed, that those glands have bacteria in them. And that they get that bacteria there through your digestion and what you're eating. So if you have a healthy gut, then that helps protect your breasts. So I thought that was so interesting. And they're also finding that there's certain types of bacterial species that are in healthy breast tissue that seem to fight off cancer. So one of the things that I'm doing on a regular basis is I take a special probiotic and I eat kimchi every day. You can make it, but I'm buying it right now. But I think that is something else I'm doing to try and stay safe. So just to review, conventionally raised animals are eating a lot of pesticide and herbicide feed unless you get the non-GMO organic meat, which is quite expensive. It's hard to do that when you have a family. So we weren't always able to do that, especially over COVID. And unfortunately, the Roundup and the glyphosate that's used in a lot of the feed that they give to animals is an estrogen mimicker. So they're even in the feedlots, they spray the animals with pesticides because there's pests, because the animals are so close together, the chickens. I even read about this online and it was disturbing. You know, unless you're able to afford the old-time family farm way that people used to raise meat, it's very different now. So again, those things mimic estrogen in your body, and so you are what you eat. So right now, unless you can really get clean meat, I think it's best to keep it at a minimum, my opinion. Also, there's something called forever chemicals, and don't be too scared. Your body can get rid of them over time. It takes several years. But unfortunately, a lot of the products that we use have forever chemicals that come off when we wash like the things that are rain guard, waterproof. A lot of that, not all of it, but some of it has forever chemicals. So when you wash it in the washing machine, it goes into the groundwater, and the water runoff, and then eventually it can make its way, unfortunately, into animals. And they found it in dairy cows, meat, different types of dairy and cows for meat consumption. So lastly, animal fats are saturated and they're harder on your heart and arteries. So if you think about a stick of butter and then you think about like olive oil, and the stick of butter, it's solid at room temperature. And even when you warm it up, you can see the little globules of fat in it. Whereas if you have avocado oil or olive oil, that is like, if you hold it up to the light, it's very clear. And that's how it acts in your body. Animal fats make it harder on your body, and there's more globules of fat running around in there. So when I went through radiation, one of the doctors who talked to me, she said, when you get done with radiation, she said, we found that people that go on a Mediterranean-style diet have the greatest chance of never coming back ever to being in having cancer. So she recommended this for me, so I'm passing this on. So a Mediterranean diet is characterized by a great quantity of vegetables, fresh vegetables, fruits, nuts, and extra virgin olive oil, which they're studying olive oil and they say it has a really good protective effect against cancer. So lastly, again, with a Mediterranean style diet, reduced intake of red meat and dairy. And that, in some ways, some parts of the area in Italy have changed a little bit, where people used to eat a certain way and now they eat a lot more cheese and red meat. But the old way, like I guess what used to be considered the true Mediterranean style, had very little red meat and dairy. So just in a conclusion here, I found out through genetic testing, I don't carry the BRCA gene, but I have trouble metabolizing estrogen. And I guess it's common in about 40% of women. So I didn't know that. I thought, I'm just sharing this, that maybe it's worth it to know more about your individual genetics. I don't, just learning more about how your body processes things. I also have dense breast tissue, which I guess is pretty common too. Like about half of women have this, and I could not feel the tumor. I had no idea that I had any problem. And nobody could feel it. It was only picked up through a 3D mammogram because of my dense breast tissue. The true size of the tumor was only determined by MRI, so it was a little bit bigger by the time they finally did the MRI. Again, check your hormone levels. Between the ages of 45 and 55, that's a really common time for women to have a lot of huge fluctuations in their hormones. And it's good to make sure that your body is processing and getting things correctly out of you, so that you don't have any buildup of things that could cause cancer. Take an active role in your health. Just be proactive. I guess that's one thing, just reading about all this. And I just don't want anybody else to be hit out of the blue with something bad. I think, I have 2 daughters and I worry, about them. And I'm hopeful that this information can help people. And also, if you're a survivor, then keep on surviving. All right, thank you. Okay. So we're gonna, if you have any questions, I think what we're gonna do is, if there's anything specific about the talk, we could do that, or if you want to wait till after we have our conversation, and then if you have questions, we'd love to take them and answer them the best we can. Okay. Yeah. So Laurel, hi.
Hi.
So again, we'll focus in on the camera. So Laurel is a friend of mine who talked to me about plant-based diet and the importance of eating well to help get through treatments, and then afterward to stay in a good place being a survivor. So Laurel, go ahead and talk about, kind of your experiences.
Yes. So thank you, Natalie. And I kind of mentioned it a little bit earlier, but I'm going to give a little disclaimer. About 2 weeks ago, I had a little fall and hit my head and required some staples, and still have a little bit of a concussion and some vertigo. So if it seems like I'm moving my head slightly awkwardly, I am, and that's why. And we'll get back to that, because honestly, everything that I learned through this whole breast cancer journey really applied to the last 2 weeks of my life. If you would have asked me last Saturday, I was supposed to be at the first event and I was in bed. If I was going to be here today, I would have told you no, that there was no way I felt that terrible. But I really did focus. I researched all the things I could do for a concussion, sort of what I did with the breast cancer. Really upped my diet, couldn't exercise, but just ate all the fruits and vegetables that I could. And it just really, I think, made me heal faster, and why I'm here today. And I found some meditation. So for me, I guess I'll back it up. I was diagnosed in December, they found the lump, and mine you could feel. So I had breast implants, and I had been looking to get them taken out. They had never worked very well for me. I always had problems with them. So I'd gone to see a doctor before COVID, and she ended up being the surgeon that worked with my cancer doctor in the end. So I'd gotten a quote on that to fix that situation, and then COVID hit. So I didn't do anything. And I hadn't had a mammogram in several years, in truth, because I had been having problems with the one in particular. And so it was just sort of happenstance. I'd gone with a friend. She decided COVID was a great time to get plastic surgery. So I went with her to see just a second opinion to her doctor. And he actually was the one that found it. And it was just a little lump right there. I could feel it. And he thought it was probably nothing, but said, just go get it checked. And, kind of from that moment on, from December 15th on, the worry began. And I didn't really have the biopsy until January 15th. And the person who did the biopsy even said that day, she was like, it feels really good. It's not hard. I think this is going to be nothing. So I left there thinking, this is fine. And then 2 days later, got the phone call that it absolutely was not fine. And so I had lost my father to cancer. He was 61. And a few years prior to my diagnosis, I had had a very dear friend that was my age. And she had had breast cancer that had come back aggressively. And so I'd also lost her. So through both of those experiences, I knew some things about cancer that I was personally in denial about, as you are. You don't think about things until you have to. I was middle-aged. I had just stopped working. I was newly retired. I had convinced myself that, wine every night was a great idea, Starbucks in the morning, eating whatever I wanted, really. I was just at that point. If I wanted the French fries, I had the French fries. And my whole life prior to that, I really hadn't done those things. I had been a very careful eater. I'd always been very active, very into sports. And so I still maintained a level of activity. I like to hike, ski, play pickleball. So in my mind, I thought that I was healthy. But I learned through this experience, there's a difference between being healthy and being fit. I was fit. I wasn't necessarily healthy. So I think from the moment that I got the diagnosis, I knew, right away that there were things that I could do, because I had watched these other people, and I knew that diet was important, and I knew that meditation was important as well. And at this point when I was diagnosed, I was an anxious person. I had had anxiety for the last 10 years of my life. I had had chronic sciatica, just issues, things that just developed in my 40s. And I just truly didn't know where it came from. And like you said, you weren't feeling well. It was a struggle. Like, there were times that I just wasn't feeling well. And if I back it up 3 years from the tumor, I was going through a really hormonal time. And I had known to do the natural route. I had learned in my earlier days all about hormone replacement, and I knew the risks of all of that, and there was a natural way around that. But when it came to my time, I felt so terrible that I had a doctor that kind of talked me out of going the natural route and into getting an IUD at the time, which you can't ever prove how you got breast cancer, but I think it was a perfect storm of these things. I wasn't taking care of myself in the way that I should. I maybe had a hormone implant in my body that my body wasn't reacting well to. So it was just a lot of things. So I immediately cut out sugar, because I knew that was sort of the devil when it comes to cancer. So it was no wine, from that first diagnosis day going forward, cut out the Starbucks. And then I had a friend who had sent me, and the book is over here, I brought it just to share, the Crazy Sexy Diet book, and Crazy Sexy Cancer was her original book. The author is Chris Carr, and she had an inoperable cancer situation in her 30s and was basically sent home to die. And she went on a journey to figure out the diet, meditation part of all of this to help herself. And she's still around. The cancer's still in her, but she shut it all off with everything that she found in her book. Really resonated with me, because it wasn't so technical. that it scared you, but it had the science behind the why you should do the things that you should. And she was very focused on, she had a 21-day cleanse to kind of help you get into the whole food plant-based. And I didn't even really at that point understand whole food, plant-based, vegetarian, vegan, what the differences were there. And so she kind of broke all of that down. And so then I understood whole food, plant-based, and understood the importance of getting rid of like the gluten and dairy and some of the other things that, I thought, well, I could just eat a lot of vegetables and fruit and I'll still be fine if I have these other things. But I liked her book because she really explains the why and what those things do to your body, especially if you're in a hormone cancer situation. And so I decided to try her 21-day cleanse and just kind of jumped in, because I also think at that time I needed to feel a little in control of something throughout that process. So, I think for some of you that have been through this and you understand, like those early days when you're getting diagnosed and you're figuring out your treatment plan, it's scary. And you feel like everything's really out of control. So I think that getting the diet under control was a great way for me to get some control back in that situation. And then the meditation really started because of my oncologist surgeon, Dr. Pomeranke. She had recommended a book for me to prepare for surgery. It was called Prepare for Surgery, Healing Faster. And it was by a woman named Peggy Huddleston. And I was always the type that was very like, go, 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 not very meditative. I didn't think I could ever meditate. And I had a misunderstanding around what meditation was, as it turns out. After going through her so she had guided meditations that you would listen to, and I listened to them every day, twice a day, to prepare for my surgery. And then she had this belief that you would have a circle of care. She would form all your friends and family when you were having your surgery. They would be sending intentions to you specifically around that time. And it was supposed to give you calm and healing. And then also to calm yourself, to visualize each day kind of what you wanted your outcome to be. And even further than just post-surgery. So for me, it was a lot of visualizing, going hiking, going skiing with my husband, being even on the beautiful drives to all these places in Colorado that are so calming. I thought a lot about that. I pictured, it was right before my 50th birthday, so I pictured my 50th birthday, I pictured my 80th birthday, I pictured healing really quickly. I pictured they had told me 4 to 6 weeks before I could get back to my activities. I just kept picturing 4 weeks, that everything was healed. And so that was how I kind of went into the surgery and had started the diet. And a big part of her 21-day plan with the diet is you do a green juice every day. So it's either a green juice or a smoothie. And so I had started to do all of that before surgery. And then, the day of surgery, it was kind of amazing. One of the other things she recommended was to have an intention, because she really believed that when you're under for surgery, that your subconscious hears what's going on. And so I had a conversation with my anesthesiologist, Dr. Pomeranke, gave them an intention, asked Dr. Pomeranke, I said, would you mind just reading this while I'm under? And it was all about how I would heal quickly and all the things that I had been meditating around. And as they were wheeling me into surgery, the anesthesiologist commented that my pulse was basically 65 beats per minute. He was like, are you an athlete? And farthest thing from it at that point, I was a scared middle-aged woman. But I had calmed myself. Like the meditation was really starting to work for me, and the diet, I believe, too. So the two of those things going together. After the surgery, I just continued with the diet. At that point, I was feeling so much better and I was starting to lose weight. My incisions were healing nicely. I noticed that the sciatica that I had been dealing with for the last, almost 10 years of my life, shots in my back, everything was going away. And so I was really kind of motivated to stay with the clean eating. And I was starting to enjoy the foods as well. Like I used to think that fruit didn't taste good anymore. And what I realized that we have so much sugar in our lives that fruit doesn't taste as sweet as other sweet things that we eat. And so once I started to cut all of that out, like fruit was delicious and vegetables were delicious. So that was a nice surprise. And I started to feel kind of empowered through all of that. And the meditation continued. So I felt like it got me through the surgery, and I was feeling so different at this point that I tried to continue on with it and learn how to do it without the guided meditation and to do it on my own. And looking back, I think what I ended up doing, I tend to be a bit of an introvert. I'm one of those people that presents as an extrovert to people that I know, but I am actually very introverted. And so I think the idea of therapy is sort of torturous to me, but I think I kind of went through some self-therapy, and I really continued on with the meditation and was able to, I realized that meditation was really thinking everything through. I think in the past, I thought meditation was trying to quiet your mind, and if you have the bad thought, you don't think about it. You try and get it out of your head. But what I learned through meditation was it's thinking everything through. It's actually thinking the bad thought the whole way through. I looked at each thought that would come into my mind as an onion, and then I was peeling different layers of it until I got to the core of what was there. And, it was a lot of traumas that came through, things from my childhood, a lot of things from my life that I never had thought about. I didn't realize, people always say that you carry this baggage with you, and it's true. I had no idea. We have these moments in our lives that happen to us, and we take a story away from those moments about ourselves, and we don't even realize it. And you can go your whole life with these little stories about yourself that sometimes aren't right. And if you reach a certain point and you reflect back on those, then I think you can peel those onions and get to the core of what was really happening. And so there was a lot of that happened for me as I was healing. And, what that looked like for me was a lot of, forgiving moments, being able to forgive what happened, forgive maybe the person that the hurt was involved with, forgive myself for carrying that thought forward. It was just really, really healing. One particular relationship has been difficult my entire life. And for the first time ever, we have a really beautiful relationship now. And I think that it was being able to kind of turn that corner and being able to communicate finally and being able to just find a place of calm and balance. And so I feel like that's kind of where I am now. So it's a year and a half later, and, just physically, emotionally, mentally, every way, I feel like between the diet and the meditation, it's completely changed me. And to a place that I want to be now, that I want to stay in this place forever. If you would have asked me a year and a half ago if I thought I'd be making like homemade salad dressings and, prepping my food each week and meditating each day, I probably would have looked at you like you were crazy. But that is where I am. And I was very lucky. My husband, he was very supportive through this process, and he saw the changes, not even just the physical, but the anxiety being gone, the sciatica being gone. And so he decided to do the same, and he had similar results. I think I lost 35 pounds, he lost 30, and we both have maintained that a year and a half later. I'm still extremely rigid. Chris Carr, what I liked in her book that she talks about is striving each week, each day of your life, each week, each month, between 80-20 and 60-40. So if you're eating, 80% plant-based, whole food plant-based, and 20% the other things, or, on a bad week or a bad day, it looks like 60-40. I still think, and because of my personal experience and just how I'm feeling, I'm living more in the 100% of the whole food plant-based. But it's really great to see somebody like my husband, who he really did it 100% for like 6 months. And now he's in the 80-20, I'd say 60-40 a lot, but he looks fantastic. He feels great. I have 2 other friends, one that's going through similar diagnosis that we had, and she's sort of halfway, and the other friend, no cancer. She just had a high cholesterol reading and was scared and said, okay, what are you doing? And so I told her, and, she didn't want to give up red meat or any of the meats and seafood. And she's had very similar results. So it's comforting to me to know that down the road, when I feel like I'm in a better state hormonally and that things are, in balance for a long time, that, I can have a treat here and there. And I do sort of approach it for myself that, in the short term, if I go on a vacation or if there's a moment that has a beginning and an end, I feel like that's the time where maybe I would have, whatever it is. But at this point, I'm not really craving anything, which is kind of a cool thing about this change, is that I just feel like I found such balance. And though talking about it is my least favorite thing to do, if it helps somebody else to find that balance, then it's important, because it was such a scary time in my life. And then to have it, there are these silver linings that came out of the experience, as they often do. And you realize, I look back now and I'm like, it was a bit of a wake-up call for me in many ways in my life. And, not that I blame myself in any way for what happened, but, going back to the beginning, it's nice to have some control in a situation that feels very out of control. So,
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Laurel. So much. Yeah. It is difficult to talk about all of this. It's hard. And so it is really special that Laurel talked about things. And something, Laurel, I wanted to talk to you about in terms of your diet every day. She's 100% plant-based, and that's what I do as well. So how does your morning start? Do you have a smoothie?
I alternate between, so in the book that I liked, she does a green juice, and it's green apple. You can do red apple. You can add a pear. It's celery, lettuce. I do super green, sometimes romaine. It's broccoli stem, some ginger root, cucumber. And so I either juice it, which is the more preferable in our household, is to juice it. It just has a nice smooth texture, and you don't get all of the fiber every day, was sort of her thing. And then, but it's similar combination every day. You can add different things. The days that I don't juice it, I do a smoothie. So I make it into a smoothie, so it's a little bit thicker. And in the beginning, she did say that, it's an acquired taste, and that you would eventually get used to it and crave it. And I remember the first couple of days drinking it, I specifically said to my husband, make note, I will never crave this. And I do. I wake up and it's the first thing that I crave. So it was absolutely true. And then, so I'll start with that. And actually before I do that, I'll have some of the pectin powder that you taught me about. So Natalie had shared that there's pectin powder that is supposed to help fight breast cancer. If you want to talk about that for a second.
Yeah. Okay. So this was something that was brought up to me by the author that will be speaking, and she talked to me about fractionated pectin powder. You can find it online, and it is something that you can take once a day, like right before you eat breakfast. Or you can take it, I was reading, you can take it also twice a day. You can do it in the morning and at night. What it does, from the research that they're seeing with animals and with the research they're doing with computer models, and they're doing it with people as well, that it binds to bad things like cancer cells that might be roaming around. Something that was a little bit disconcerting that I found out through just this journey is that every day we all get exposed to cancer through lots of different ways. And we have sometimes these little cancer cells in our body that we don't know about. And then when we eat well, we hydrate, we have clean water, filtered water that doesn't have anything bad in it. And we take this pectin powder, it can help your body bind to any bad things, like little cancer cells, and help them eliminate through you, get them out. And they found that it's really helping people that have issues with their colon. So I wanted to share that with you as well.
I even understood that that's really what it did. I just did it because you told me to. I trusted you.
Okay. All right.
But I'll have the pectin powder and then the green juice. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so fish, the Mediterranean diet, how they had said, and I love fish and seafood. And so that was sort of the last bastion for me that I thought I would hold on to. And um, again, I think a lot of the food issues that I see are American issues. Like I would go to Italy, I would go to Norway, I would go to other countries, and I would eat um, different foods there that I wouldn't eat here. Like I feel like I would eat gluten in Italy that I wouldn't eat here. Like we've over processed everything here, and so the fish issue for me is there's a lot of plastic in the oceans now, and so they're finding that the fish are full of plastic. And so here I've gone through my whole life eliminating every piece of plastic that I can, and so it just seemed incredibly strange to me to continue to eat fish at this point. And again, because I'm trying to make sure that I'm keeping my body as balanced as possible because of this hormone issue. I think that if I didn't have cancer and I was going whole food plant-based like I have and never had this experience, didn't have cancer in my family, I would eat fish, sparingly. And I would get the best quality fish that I can get.
Wild fish.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
And what's the thinking on coffee these days?
So coffee, from my understanding, it's just the caffeine issue in general. So again, with the hormone specific problem that I have, the caffeine wasn't recommended. Like really the only caffeine that I ever have is from green tea. That's the only caffeine that they recommended. I know that like dark chocolate that has caffeine in it is something that you can have if you're on this diet, and I still try to avoid that because I don't have caffeine. But again, I think if you didn't have a cancer situation and you were just trying to be super healthy, and I don't know that coffee, my husband drinks coffee. He has a cup of really good coffee every day, and he did that. I mean, when he did the cleanse, he didn't drink the coffee, and that was a little bit of a rough time for him, but he did go back to the coffee. Yeah. Yeah, it's the caffeine. I think that it's more around your estrogen and your hormones that the caffeine is bad for. So it triggers your hormone levels to change. And so when you're trying to get if you, like you said, that you realize that you have an abundance of estrogen, and that was my issue as well. So when you're trying to get all of that into balance, you don't want to be adding things that are going to interfere with the hormones that you're trying desperately to keep under some kind of balance. In theory, that's what they say. So,
And all alcohol because of the sugar.
yes, all alcohol because of the sugar, for sure. And the more I understood about alcohol, and I loved my alcohol. I loved to, have drinks and have always been very social with alcohol. And really more than just the cancer, understanding as you age how your organs work and the main organs and the organs that, really contribute to our menopause symptoms. Alcohol is bad news. It can take you like 2 days to get that clear from your liver, your kidneys, and so people that drink every day, you never give your body a chance to really heal itself. And when you're going through these hormonal cancers and that trigger like menopause, then that works totally against all the symptoms that you're trying to keep at bay. And like for me now, I'm on tamoxifen, which basically puts you into an early menopause. And so, eating clean, I think, is the one thing that's really saving me with a lot of the symptoms that come with menopause and tamoxifen. Like right now, I'm just having, hot flashes mainly at night. And I've learned sort of how to meditate through them during the day. And I seem to have calmed them down there. But I know that adding back things like alcohol and coffee would increase those symptoms that I'm trying so hard to control.
Fermented and unfermented soy.
Mm-hmm.
Natalie and I had a conversation about that.
Yeah.
About that, and also like the cancer risk, especially breast cancer, is it lower after menopause or not necessarily?
Not necessarily. No.
Yeah.
Well, for us with the hormone specific, that will get better. But I think once you've had cancer too, like your risk percentages increase. I was talking with Natalie. I had recently convinced myself that I wanted to go off of the tamoxifen. And I had really been taking less than I should each day because the side effects were so what I thought were really bad. And I had a conversation recently with a new oncologist and who was very supportive of me going off of it. And she was willing to test me, every few months and do anything to just check on me that I wanted to do. But in the end, she sort of explained, how these cancers can come back. And that when I didn't understand that when you have breast cancer, that if it comes back, in 5 or 10 years, that it doesn't always come back as a breast cancer, that it can come back as lung cancer, it can come back as brain cancer, and they'll still say that it's breast cancer because that was the original cancer that you had. And so when I understood that whole, metastasizing in the future, and she said, it's always going to be grade 3 or 4 when it comes back. And that is what happened to my father and to my dear friend. So it motivated me to go back on the tamoxifen. So right now I'm dealing with a lot of hot flashes, but I think when I weighed the pros and cons, hot flashes versus, chemo and everything that you have to go through or worse. So it's a struggle. It's a daily struggle of keeping a balance, truly.
So I was going to talk a little bit. So I do drink green tea. I drink something called matcha.
Yeah, I do too.
And it's a Japanese special tea, and you actually ingest the plant. So it's ground into a powder. It's a green powder, and I try to drink that every day. And it changes how your body, it doesn't give you a spike of caffeine. So I've noticed, because I played around with different teas, that I thought, oh, I'll try black tea. Well, if it, like Earl Grey tea or whatever, I had all these different packages. And the caffeine, whoa, I was like, whoa, what just happened? I mean, because I haven't been doing much, and I thought, I'm ready to go clean the whole house or something. But then with the matcha, it's much more subtle, and it's really healthy for you. And they've found that people that ingest a certain amount of green tea, it protects against uterine and ovarian cancer, and it's just overall protective against cancer. And especially when you ingest it in that really good state of it's ground into that powder. And so I can tell you about it afterwards, what I get, but I thought that was really interesting. So I wanted to share that that's kind of my normal thing. Like I wake up and I try to remember to take the fractionated powder first, but sometimes I forget. And then I have a smoothie, and my smoothie is a little different. I don't juice as much as Laurel, but I do make smoothies. And one of my favorite smoothies is I do almond milk. I put almond butter. This is all organic stuff. I put walnuts, because walnuts are really good anti-cancer. I put flaxseed. I put, what else do I put in there? Oh, I use a protein powder that is vegan, organic. And I noticed, so I can tell you about that as well after we're not being recorded, but I can share with you all the products. But one of the things about this protein powder is it was developed by a man whose mom had gone through cancer. And he wanted to create something for her so that as she was going through her treatments and finishing, that she would feel better. And I see a huge difference when I have this powder. I feel so much better because I like to swim. So I go swim every day. I don't know if I'll go today because it might not, but I try to go every day. But anyways, I put that powder in there, and I love cacao powder. So chocolate, cacao powder is it's a very good antioxidant. So I guess that's, I do that. And then I put chia seeds. So chia seeds are good for you too. And What else do I put in there? I'm trying to think. Oh, I also put this cocoa that has cultured probiotics. I stick that in there. Oh, and then moringa. So sometimes I put moringa in there, which is an anti-inflammatory. So I whisk that all together. Oh, I put blueberries and organic blueberries and a banana. And I share it with my husband because usually it gets pretty big. And so that's what I do every morning. So that is kind of my ritual. And then afterwards, I make the matcha tea and I'm journaling. So after I do all this, my kids are older now, so it makes it a little easier, but I journal. And I feel like that journaling really helps me because I have issues with anxiety. And I wish I could turn the button off, but I get really concerned and afraid about a lot of things in the world. Like I watch the news and I'm like, oh my gosh, are we going to die? And then I'm like, okay, we're going to be okay. We're going to be okay. And, so you watch all this stuff, you're like, no. So journaling and meditation and just finding whatever it is, whether it's your religious beliefs, your faith, or whatever, just finding that place where you feel calm. And journaling has helped me in meditation. And then for lunch, I try to do a salad, a raw salad. So
Yeah.
broccoli, cauliflower, all that. I'm trying to do it raw now. And I do take supplements. So I have kind of a weird situation. I'm a little bit different than Laurel. I was on tamoxifen for 4.5 months, and they were monitoring me. And before I started, they did an ultrasound, the transvaginal ultrasound, and they said, okay, your uterus looks fine, but we're worried about your ovaries. Okay, so I was like, oh my gosh. So then they said, we're going to give you 6 weeks because we're worried about your ovaries. And I don't know why my ovaries were weird, but they were. So I went off all plastics, and I just decided I got filtered water, did all this stuff, did all the plant-based, but just even made it extra careful. I wasn't drinking water out of plastic, anything. Well, 6 weeks later, my ovaries looked good. So I don't know whether it was the tamoxifen or it was just me being even cleaner than I had been before. So the ovaries were okay. I didn't have to get those taken out. But then they said, we see a potential polyp in your uterus. I was like, you got to be kidding me. And they said, yeah, that can happen with tamoxifen. And they said, yeah, and sometimes it can turn into cancer. I was like, you got to be kidding me. So I kept taking the tamoxifen because, of course, you're supposed to take it. I come back 6 weeks later, and now I have 2 polyps. And they 2 potential polyps because they didn't say definitely, but they said, we're pretty sure. So then they started doing all these tests, and they said, we've got to take them out because we don't know. We don't know if it's cancer or not. I'm like, you got to be kidding me again. We're going through all this. So they took out the polyps. I went through surgery January 24th, I think it was, this year. Luckily, everything was benign. So I was like, whoa, okay. So I was like, okay, good. So anyways, after that, I talked to my oncologist. He said, I understand if you don't want to take tamoxifen anymore because you're part of this group of women that they get polyps and it turns into cancer. So I was like, oh boy, so I'm off of tamoxifen. So the other option is I'm like right on the borderline for menopause. And so tamoxifen can put you into early menopause. If you take it for a year or so, it can trigger that in women. Not always, but it can. And I was right on the edge anyways. So I'm like right there, almost on the cusp of it, but not quite. So they don't really want to give me medicine to suppress my ovaries because they're not really doing a whole lot, but they're not really sure what medicine to give me. So they said, come back in July. So I go in 2 weeks, but they want to test my hormones again. And they're talking about other types of drugs that are for after menopause. But the problem with those drugs is they hurt your bones. So then they said, well, we can give you shots, to help your bones. So I don't know. So I'm still trying to puzzle through this. I know women that are, ditch the medicine and have been totally okay. We know people that have ditched she knows people that have ditched the medicine, not okay.
Gone.
Not here anymore. So it's a tricky situation. But, and so I think it's one of those things where you kind of try to navigate your way because each one of us has a different situation and story. But right now I'm in this holding pattern. My oncologist, I had and I don't know about the other women survivors in the room, but they took a DNA sample from the tumor because it was a solid tumor. And they test me now every 3 months. I have a special test called Signatera blood test, and they make sure there's no cancer cells circulating through my body anywhere. So I've been doing this ever since during radiation and and it keeps coming back all clear. But it's always a weird thing. You go and you have them come, they'll come to your door and take your blood. So it's like, okay, hey, it's the phlebotomist, we're here. And so I get the blood drawn and, so I have to wait a couple of weeks to know I'm okay. So that's kind of a rough thing to go through. But that is one of the things I'm doing. They're monitoring me. And so I'm also getting my hormonal levels tested periodically. And at this point right now, my oncologist said, we'll see what you want to do at the end of August or July. And so I may test out some of these different medicines just to see how it goes. But it's just one of those things where you have to kind of, each one of us navigates our way. But I feel that the plant-based nutrition has been a huge thing for me. I'm exercising every day. That's one of the things they recommended for women after they've gone through this, that regulates your hormones. So I really encourage all survivors, all women, no matter what, to get out there and do something every day for 30 minutes at least. And I love to swim, so I do that. And I know Laurel loves to hike. She does 14ers and all sorts of cool stuff. So just doing that is really fun. And a couple of weeks ago, we drove out to Lake Tahoe. We had a really great time, except we ran into a bat and had to get rabies shots. But crazy world we live in, right? But the good news is I went out there because I love to swim, and I had been training because I used to swim with a team, and now I've gotten back into it. And I did the longest swim I've ever done in my whole life. I did 2.4 miles in 57-degree water with a wetsuit on, so I look like a fish. And I had a great time because it was kind of like, hey, my body is feeling really good. And, that's just one of the things, one of the perks I feel that's happened to me. I feel lighter since I stopped eating meat. I don't crave it at all. I mean, I still want to help out. My husband still has a little bit here and there. So do my kids, fish. But I just wanted to share with you that, yeah, I've been really having this really big change in how I feel. My skin, I think, is better. I think Laurel has mentioned that, like, just your whole body seems to work better.
Hair.
Yeah, the hair, like I've actually got more hair than I used to have. I don't know. So who knows? But I just wanted to share these things with the hope that it'll encourage you, inspire you, and, make your journey even, a bit better, or hopefully a lot better. So thank you. Okay. Thank you, Laurel. Yeah. So right now,